The winds of the fateful day whispered through the ancient hills of what's now known as Norfolk, where Boudica, queen of the Iceni, was preparing for her final stand. The year was 60 AD, and the rebellion she had ignited with fire and fury had reached its bloody crescendo. The Romans were coming. Their legions, unyielding, relentless, had already crushed her warriors once before. Now they were marching toward her in full force, their armored ranks heavy with the weight of imperial power. The battle would take place near the village of Watling Street, the ancient Roman road that bisected Britain, a place where fate would be sealed. The night before the battle, Boudica sat alone in her war tent, the flickering light of a single fire casting long shadows on the walls. Her thoughts, once clear as the sharpest blade, were clouded. Her heart, so fierce and resolute in the past, now felt heavy, as though weighed down by the ghosts of her fallen people, her stolen daughters, and the price of rebellion. The wind outside howled, carrying the scent of the coming rain, but it also brought a fleeting sense of calm, a reminder of what she had fought for: the land, her people, her freedom. She closed her eyes, remembering the days before the Romans had come, before they had ravaged her village, humiliated her, and taken everything from her. There was a time when laughter had filled the air, when the sun had seemed brighter and the world full of promise. She remembered her daughters, young, innocent, running with the winds, their laughter echoing through the hills. The memory was both a balm and a dagger to her heart. They had been taken from her in an unspeakable manner by the Romans, their spirits extinguished in their prime, and Boudica had sworn vengeance. But now, in the stillness of the night, doubt crept into her heart. Had she led her people to this moment for the right reasons? Was their suffering, her suffering, worth the cost of this war? She stared at her sword, the gleaming blade that had been her constant companion in her quest for justice, and wondered if it would be enough to see her through the coming battle. She could hear the distant sounds of her warriors sharpening their weapons, preparing for the fight, but Boudica felt a coldness in her chest. What if they weren't enough? What if she wasn't enough? Her thoughts drifted to the eve before the battle, when she had seen the faces of her warriors, those who would follow her into the fire, those who had lost so much already and still chose to fight. They were driven by rage and sorrow, by a thirst for justice that no Roman legion could quench. Yet in their eyes, Boudica had seen something else: fear. Fear for what lay ahead, fear for their lives, and fear for what would become of their families if they failed. The sky darkened, and Boudica's mind returned to the task at hand. The Romans would be marching toward them soon. Their disciplined lines, their towering shields, their endless formations. Boudica thought of the Roman general Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, the man who had crushed her first wave of resistance with brutal efficiency. She had no illusions about his skill. He was a man of steel, a man who had brought destruction to countless peoples. She had seen his soldiers before, cold, calculating, and unflinching. Still, she could not back down. Her people needed her. She needed them. It was not just her battle, it was their battle. They were fighting for their right to live as they always had, free of Rome's suffocating grasp. She would not let them die in vain. A brief flicker of joy crossed her mind as she thought of the tribal alliance she had forged, the strength of the Celts united under her banner. The tribes of the Iceni, the Trinovantes, the Catuvellani, the Brigantes, all had come together in this moment, drawn to her side by the fury of her words and the fire of her spirit. They had rallied behind her, not just out of loyalty, but out of a shared dream. They believed in her. They believed in their freedom. But as she stood up and walked outside, the cold night air biting at her skin, a familiar sorrow weighed heavily on her heart. She thought of her daughters, of their innocence lost to the hands of the Romans, and of the justice she had yet to see through. She thought of the families who would never see their loved ones again. And with each step forward, she could feel the weight of their hopes and fears pressing upon her. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Boudica stood on the rise, overlooking the battlefield, a field where the earth would soon be soaked with blood. Her warriors gathered behind her, and for a moment the weight of the world seemed to lift. In their eyes she saw something that renewed her spirit: determination. They had come this far, and they would not turn back. She raised her sword high, its edge catching the first rays of the sun, and her voice rang out across the field. For the land, for our freedom, for the lives that have been taken from us. The battle would soon begin, and as Boudica led her people into the fray, she knew this fight would be remembered for centuries. Whether they won or lost, her name, her legacy, would live on. But in the deepest recesses of her heart, there was one final wish, a fleeting hope that the cost of this rebellion, whatever the outcome, would be worth the bloodshed, and that in the end, her daughters would be avenged. As the horns of battle sounded and the clash of swords filled the air, Boudica's resolve solidified. She could not change what had happened, but she could change what would come. And in this final battle, she would either die as a queen or rise as a legend. Rise as a